Yes, sir. We back again. It's Cole Krugel, and I'm going to be talking about vocal compression today. Compression is one of the most commonly used tools in audio and music production. However, it's also one of the most misunderstood concepts. What does compression do? Well, it works to control the dynamic range, which is the difference between the quietest and loudest parts of a sound. For a visual representation of this, think of a floor and ceiling in a room. When you compress, you are lowering that ceiling, making it closer to the floor, and then taking a crane and lifting that entire room with the lowered ceiling up off of the ground. This is how you get vocals to sit up on top of the mix and also sound, in the forefront as well as in your face. Vocals are very dynamic in nature, so in order to get them to be in the forefront, you definitely need to compress. Now, let's get into the parameters of compression. I'm gonna pull up this R compressor today by Waves. It's a pretty handy tool, pretty basic, but it's all reliable, works pretty well. So the first parameter I'm gonna be talking about is the threshold. Threshold is the point at which compression starts. So if I drag this down, you can see it says negative 17.2. That means compression is going to start kicking in at negative 17.2 decibels. The next parameter is the ratio. This is how much compression is being applied once the level of the sound exceeds the threshold. So essentially, once the sound gets louder than negative 17.2 decibels, the compression is going to start kicking in. The higher the ratio, the more compression. So the higher that number is on that ratio, the harder it's compressing. And now to the next parameters of attack and release. Attack is how quickly the compressor is reacting to the sound crossing the threshold, and release is how long it takes for that compression to let go. Now, attack and release settings are very hard to hear for the untrained ear, so you really got to play with them to the extremes if you don't know what you're doing. That's the only way you're going to truly hear what they're doing. Now, recommended settings for attack and release, well, for like aggressive vocals, you're going to want to try a faster attack. As far as like the release time goes, faster release time will tend to excite the sound, and a slower release time will tend to smooth it over. And last but not least, the gain. Due to dynamic range being reduced, gain is used to make up for some of the volume loss after it's being compressed. This is the crane analogy I used in, that little visual representation I gave you. So you're controlling and then you're lifting back up. Alright, so I'm gonna play a little excerpt from a song by artist named Broadway Muse. The song's called Bending out on all platforms. Y'all go check that out later. But anyways, I'm gonna be working on it on a loop, and just so you can kind of hear what I'm doing, and then I'm gonna be bypassing it and then unbypassing it just so you can hear the difference in real time.
Ducking off of my lonely nigga might spaz out of my moment. Bitches running up on me, should've turned Hamilton up, boom. Ducking off of my lonely nigga might spaz out of my moment. Bitches running up on me, should've turned Hamilton up, boom. Ducking off of my lonely nigga might spaz out of my moment. Bitches running up on me, should've turned Hamilton up, boom. Ducking off of my lonely nigga might spaz out of my moment. Bitches running up on me, should've turned Hamilton up, boom. Ducking off of my lonely nigga might spaz out of my moment. Bitches running up on me, should've turned Hamilton up, boom.
Alright, and that's it for today. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and pay attention to my next video where I'm going to be implementing this idea of compression and how to get a clean vocal recording from your home studio.